It has been a little bit, Producer Corey, since I've seen you. I should have known this. It's hour number 2 of the program, so it's lunchtime. You're going to break out the lunchbox. The last couple Tuesdays you've been doing the show, because that's the day you are normally in here, I haven't noticed the lunchbox. Maybe it's because I've been distracted by yelling about the Suns or something.
That's very possible.
I hadn't seen the lunchbox recently.
Yes.
There it is. I see it open. Mm-hmm. Appears that there's a sandwich in there.
That's right.
So I won't bother you any further because I know it's lunchtime for you here at the start of the segment. But
no.
Just know that I see you trolling me.
If you need anything, just let me know.
Yeah,
I can put down what I'm doing for you.
Yeah, I'm sure that, I won't bother you during your time over there. your busy period in there. I won't ask you to play off any sound or anything.
All right.
Because you're clearly busy in there enjoying lunch. Welcome back into hour number 2 of the lunch break here on KDUS AM 1060. Also on the KDUS AM 1060 app and the KDUS AM 1060 YouTube channel as well. I'm going to play you a cut, and if you joined us in hour number 1 of the program, it's not the first time I've played this today, but there's a key phrase in here. This is before the game on Sunday between Minnesota and Phoenix, the Timberwolves and the Suns. Shams Charania talking about what the future of the Suns would look like, specifically when it comes to the future of Kevin Durant. And I think there was a very important phrase that was used here.
Stakes are high. Unless there's a significant run here into the playoffs for the Phoenix Suns, league sources believe that there will be real changes in Phoenix coming to the Suns. And from a roster standpoint, that likely starts with Kevin Durant. And when we look back to the trade deadline, if we remember, Kevin Durant was blindsided when he was involved in trade conversations. But this offseason, from my understanding, what it would look like is the Suns and Durant would work together on any potential trade to a contender in a trade scenario. And I would expect 4 to 6 contending teams with some serious involvement in Durant. He's still playing at a really high level. He is extension eligible in the offseason, too. And as we know, with the Jimmy Butler situation, the extension plays a big factor. But everything with Durant hangs in the balance of not only the Suns and how they compete in the playoffs or not compete in the playoffs, but other teams, which teams get eliminated early, what teams could come about. A lot will come clear with Kevin Durant when we figure out what shapes up in the playoffs.
Work together on a trade. What does that mean? What would that look like if this summer goes the way we expect it to go, the rest of the season goes the way we expect it to go, even though the 10 seed just feels like it's open for business? It feels like the 10 seed in the Western Conference is just going to be a case of who plays the best out of a bunch of bad teams, who sucks the least over these last couple of weeks. Dallas loses Kyrie Irving to a torn ACL. Shams Charania, the same Shams Charania we just played from Sunday, is on the Pat McAfee show right now on ESPN talking about how there's a decent possibility that the one game that we saw of Anthony Davis with the Mavs this season is the only game we see this season of Anthony Davis with the Mavs. That's the 10 seed in the West right now. A team that just lost one star player to an ACL. Their other star players played one game since they traded Luka Doncic for him, and there's a potential that that player shuts it down for the rest of the season. That's the 10 seed in the West. Phoenix, the closest team to Dallas, 3.5 games back. They've got all their stars, can't even do anything to give us a little bit of hope, a little bit of confidence that they could put some pressure on Dallas. Dallas lost Kyrie Irving to a torn ACL last night. They've been without Anthony Davis, and yet there is not a single team in the Western Conference outside of the playoff picture that I think can threaten them right now. Dallas is just going to hold on to this just off of circumstance. Maybe it's Portland. Maybe. Portland's got to come from further back than Phoenix does. So that's where we think this season is going to go for the Phoenix Suns. And it's going to reach a summer where they are going to work together with Kevin Durant on a trade. So what does that mean? What does it look like? Because if you're working together, that means you're trying to find a common goal. You're trying to find a solution that works best for everybody. A trade place, a trade destination that satisfies everybody's requirements. So let's look at this from both perspectives. What does Kevin Durant want out of a trade? What does he need out of a trade? Well, you heard it in the Shams Charania clip that he's going to want to go to a contender. He's going to be 37 years old. He probably doesn't have many years left in the tank, 2 or 3. And he probably wants to go to a place where over those 2 or 3 years, he is competing for a championship. He has a shot to be an NBA champion once again. So that's going to already limit the pool of teams. You're going to limit the pool of teams to contenders. Okay, it's just going to rule out a bunch of teams. Okay, still enough teams. You just need 2 teams to cause a bidding war. Just need 2. Do I think there's more than 2 contenders that would be interested? Yes. I think Oklahoma City would be interested, especially if they don't win a championship. If they win a championship, I think they're just gonna ride that wave out. I think Memphis would be interested. I think Houston would be interested. I think Minnesota would be interested. I think all of those teams make a ton of sense as contenders. I'm talking about the 1 seed in the West if they get bounced early, the 4 seed in the West right now if they don't go on a big run, the 5 seed in the West, and the 9 seed in the West. All 4 playoff teams. The number 1 seed in the Western Conference, the second best team in basketball overall, one of 2 teams that have won 50 games already this season. Memphis, who's 15 games above 500. Houston, who's 13 games above 500. And Minnesota, who, yeah, they're the 9 seed. Yeah, they're only 4 games above 500, but they traded Karl Anthony Towns this offseason. So that's a big change to now have to go out there and try to play. And the fact that they're still the 9 seed, and they're, again, just a half game out of being the 6 seed, so that's how close this is. They could be in the mix. Okay. Those are a list of teams. Durant's going to want to go to one of those teams. He's going to want to go to a contender. Those are the teams in the West. The East, could the Knicks be interested if they get bounced early? I've told you, New York radio's all over this. They are all over the idea if the Knicks fall flat in the playoffs that it might be time to call up the Suns about Kevin Durant. That conversation's ongoing. Could Milwaukee? Is Miami truly a contender? They're the 7 seed. They're 2 games below 500. Kevin Durant makes them better, but is he a quote-unquote contender? I don't know. I don't know what Kevin Durant's appetite would be to go to Miami. But the way this reads is the Suns would honor that list that Kevin Durant puts together of teams he would be interested in playing for. So that's what Kevin Durant needs. He needs to go to a contender, and I just gave you a list of a couple of contenders off the top of my head. What do the Suns need in a Kevin Durant deal? What do they need to accomplish in a Kevin Durant deal? Moving the money would be very important. Getting yourself under the second apron, like we talked about in hour number 1 of the program, that would be a start. But this team needs to check 2 boxes. They need young players, and they need draft picks. They don't need all draft picks, and they don't need all young players. They need a combination of assets. They need young players that can be brought in here and play with Devin Booker and just make this team have a solid floor. Make it to where they're not Washington or Charlotte or Toronto or Utah or New Orleans, that they're not that bad. If you brought in a young group of players and you were what the Suns were this year, 28-33, hovering around 500, kind of competing for a play-in spot, I think most people that would be a fair expectation. So you need to bring in young players to help build a floor for your team next season. And then you need the draft picks to help build around that group. The way the next version of the Suns are going to be constructed is they're going to have Devin Booker, and they're going to have a bunch of young pieces around him. And either those young pieces or those draft picks are going to get traded to get a second star around Devin Booker, or this is going to look like what it looks like in Oklahoma City, where you have SGA and then you have a bunch of other pieces. No offense to the other pieces there in Oklahoma City. They've got a bunch of great, talented players there. But that's SGA's team, and they've got Chet, and they've got Williams. They've got a nice core around him, right? Devin Booker, and then a nice core around him with somebody who can be a solid number 2, number 3, number 4. Just go down the list, right? That's what you're trying to build. That's what you're trying to make this look like. So that's what the Suns need to get out of this. And in my mind, you need to get back 2 young players, and I would say at least 1 solid draft pick. What do I mean by solid draft pick? Meaning it's something that can turn into a top 10 pick, a top 8 pick. If you're not going to give me something that looks like it's trending towards being a top 8, top 10 pick, then I'm going to need multiple draft assets. I'm going to need 2 or 3 first-round picks in a deal for Kevin Durant. But if you're going to give me one supreme asset, talk about Houston for just a second because they have the Suns pick. If you're telling me that this Suns season is going to bottom out and they're going to be a lottery team, if I can get my pick back this year, if I can get back my pick this year plus 2 young players, I'd feel pretty good about that. I'd feel pretty good about that being the base of a package. Because now I'm going to pick pretty high. I'm going to pick in the lottery. My hope is that sooner or later I'm not picking in the lottery and I'm not subjected to the bounce of the ping pong balls. And I've got 2 young players to build around with those draft picks, with Ryan Dunn, with Oso, with Devin Booker, with the group that I've put together. That's what the Suns need to accomplish. At least 2 young players and 1 really good draft asset. And if it's not going to be a really good draft asset, then it needs to be 2 or 3 solid draft assets. That's what it needs to be. Now, that feels light compared to what they gave up. But 2 young players, and not just young players, but good contracts, players that can contribute, players that are valuable, plus 1 really good draft asset, I think sets you up well. You come out of this freed up with money. You've deepened your team, better bench, young players to build around and develop, and you got back a top-tier draft asset. That's what this is going to have to look like if you're going to land Kevin Durant. That's what Phoenix is going to want back. So is there overlap? Are there teams that have the young players and have the draft assets? Well, we just mentioned one in Houston. I've mentioned the great roster that Oklahoma City has. Those are 2 teams that jump to the top of the page for me. Jump to the top of the page. And Minnesota would be a third. Those 3 teams feel like the 3 teams to pay the most attention to. Houston, because they have the Suns draft pick and they can just give the Suns basically a free mulligan and say, hey, here's your pick back. They also have a young roster that's deep with players. Oklahoma City has a young core of players that they may want to tap into to get Kevin Durant that puts them over the top. And the same thing with Minnesota. They want to pair Anthony Edwards with somebody else. Okay, they've got some players that I think the Suns would be interested in. But it's 2 young players and 1 really good draft asset, or it's 2 or 3 draft picks, solid, decent draft picks that maybe have a little bit more upside and 2 really good players. That, to me, would be the home run package. And I think there is a decent-sized runway for the Phoenix Suns to be able to make that happen, to be able to put Kevin Durant in a place that he wants to be, and for them to check all the boxes that they want in a deal. That's what working together looks like. But if Kevin Durant all of a sudden goes, I only want to go to New York and New York only, then it's going to be hard for the Suns to check those boxes. It's going to be hard for them if he just picks one team. I just picked the Knicks as an example. Let's say he picks Indiana or he picks Miami. He picks one team and says, I'm only going there. It's not really working together, and it's going to limit the Suns' ability to get back what they need to get back to feel like they've kickstarted their rebuild, their retool in the right way. So for right now, they're going to work together this summer. I just hope that that's actually what it looks like, because if they go down that path of truly working together, then I think there are enough teams that can put together compelling packages to where the Phoenix Suns don't come out of this with absolutely nothing.